came from all over the world to debate the nature of the Holy Trinity. It was one of the early church's most intense theological questions. Now, Arius from Egypt was trying to teach that Jesus wasn't equal with God the Father, and he argued his position at length. The bishops listened respectfully. Arius continued, and Bishop Nicholas became more and more agitated. Finally, he could no longer bear it, and the outraged Nicholas got up, crossed the room, and punched Arius in the face. Well, the bishops were shocked, as you can imagine. It was unbelievable that a bishop would lose control in such a solemn assembly. They brought Nicholas to the Emperor Constantine, and he agreed that Nicholas should be stripped of his bishop's garments, chained and thrown into jail. That would keep Nicholas away from the council meeting, they thought. Well, Nicholas was ashamed while he was in prison. He prayed for forgiveness, but he didn't waver in his belief. He claims that during the night, Jesus appeared asking, "Why are you in jail?" Nicholas replied, "Because I love you, and because I stood up for what I thought was right." But when the jailer came in the morning, he found Nicholas's chains on the floor, and Nicholas was dressed in his bishop's garments, quietly reading the Bible. When Constantine was told of this, he freed Nicholas, and Nicholas was fully instated as a bishop. He returned to the council and continued to argue his point, and he continued to argue until the Council of Nicaea agreed with his views. And that work of the council produced the Nicene Creed, which to this day every Anglican church across the world recites every Sunday, the Nicene Creed. So where am I going with this? Well, I'm not suggesting that this evening you cross the floor and slap each other, or try and get yourselves locked up. But I think what this story shows is, apart from the church being formed by a bunch of misfits who often disagreed with each other, they remained steadfast in what they believed. And I think standing firm to your principles is quite important. And the principles of the communities you represent, no matter what the cost. And that's not easy. So I encourage you to join with me now as we pray for help with that. Lord God, we ask for your equipping on this council. Equip us to stand firm to all that we believe to be right. At the same time, equip us to be mindful of the views and feelings of others. Father, you have created us uniquely, each with different interests and passions, each with different callings and priorities. Would you be with us now in this meeting? Send your Holy Spirit of peace and unity upon this council, that they may remain steadfast in service to one another, the people of this borough, and to you, Lord Jesus, in whose name we pray. Amen. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody, and apologies for absence. Yes, Councillor.
Councillor Catesock.
Thank you. Councillor James. Sorry about that. Declarations of interest. Thank you. None. Minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of and 18th of May. Councillor Slimming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I refer to the appendix 3 of the people that are actually nominated on committees, and note that there is a mistype, that the AWE Liaison Committee, I move that Councillor Bound join me on that committee, and that is not minuted. Could I have that corrected, please?
Sorry, with that alteration, do I gather that you're happy with the minutes? Oh, yes, Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just on page 17, the Economic Planning and Housing Committee, I think, should be Councillor Ashfield, not Councillor Ashford. Impressed?
That'll be changed, I think. Yeah, it will be. Any other alterations? It would help if you, in the future, could inform Democratic Services before the meeting. I know it's not always possible, but if you can, please do so. With those two alterations, to accept that these were the true. Yes, I'm happy to move them. Thank you. Announcements by myself. I have a couple of announcements. Public service certificates will be sent to the following councillors. Councillor Stephen Williams, 1 year service for Whitchurch, Overton and Laverstock. Samantha Jeans, 2 years for Brookvale and Kings Furlong. AJ Peters, Kempshire and Buskin for 2 years. Councillor Carruthers, Tadley South and Tadley and Pamber, 7 years. And Stuart Frost for 9 years for Oakley, North Waltham and Tadley North, Kingsclear and Borgers. So that's one of the, and the other one I have to say is I was very privileged this month, it could have been last month, to be present when the Windrush flag was flown. And for all those who don't know, there is a wonderful exhibition at the museum until the end of the month, and I would advise anybody that it's really worth going. I learnt a heck of a lot, and it was well worth going to. So that's all I have to say. Item 5, 2 minutes to answer, and this is members of the public. Do we have the lady? Jean Fisher. Aha. Would somebody like to show you where the microphone on and off switch is? And you can go ahead.
Hello, I'm Jean Fisher and I'm the chair of Crown Heights Residents Association. And as you probably all know, Crown Heights is covered in flammable cladding, and this is causing us major problems, particularly financially. So my question is, given that BDBC may have delegated the work of building inspection but retain ultimate responsibility for the building control, yet Crown Heights was built with flammable cladding contrary to building regulations in force at the time, and the cladding supplier warned the contractor of the danger of using this type of cladding without fire breaks. Given that control of planning was never delegated, and yet the construction of Crown Heights does not appear to conform to the details listed in planning permission, and moreover, given that planning permission didn't appear to specify safety, which might be considered a vital specification, what does BDBC intend to do to assist the residents of Crown Heights with a serious situation that we find ourselves in, and specifically with regard to the financial impact and things which are in control of the council? I propose that the buildings are unsafe and for this reason should be made exempt from council tax from the date of construction until we can receive an EWS1 certificate declaring that the building is safe. Now, I understand that council tax banding is a matter for the valuation office and not for local government, and therefore that's not under the control of BDBC. And so not something that BDBC can make an immediate change to. Therefore, I'm asking BDBC to immediately make a change to something which is under their control: the discretionary exemption of Crown Heights properties from council tax liabilities. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and my apologies to the Chamber and to Jean if I interrupt with a coughing fit. I've got leaking my chest, so I do apologise if I do, and I've got plenty of water here to keep going. Thank you for your question, and from the outset, I just want to be absolutely clear that we do understand the issues that residents in Crown Heights have faced. I think the Council is of course sympathetic to those serious concerns being raised by residents in Crown Heights and has worked hard to ensure that the building owner carries out the works needed to remediate the building as quickly as possible. This included lobbying central government to ensure that the costs of these works were borne by the building owner and not the leaseholders. It is unfortunately not correct to say that BDC was involved in building control. That was a matter that the developer chose to retain under their own control. It's important that we address the relevant authorities in this regard, and so the government and Barratt Homes, who have responsibility to address the issues that have been faced by many residents. However, we have and will continue to do what we can. In specific regard to the question asked, I understand that the Council gave a response last year on the same question after taking advice from colleagues in local tax. This point also relates to Councillor Mummolani's motion later on the agenda. The Council does not have a policy against which it could grant council tax exemption or discount in this circumstance. It should also be noted that council tax is levied to help meet the costs of ongoing provision for frontline services which are of benefit to all residents, and those services are actually still available to the residents of Crown Heights. We should also note the current situation where Barratts are due to begin works to remove the cladding at their cost, and that is a major step forward for residents. I wholly understand the question and the concerns that lie behind it, and we will do what is within our power to help, and we will lobby those who are responsible to meet their obligations. I thank you for the question.
Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Councillor Harvey, and thank you for all the support that you have given to this point. A minor point of correction, the building owner is an absentee owner and is not paying a penny towards anything. And Barratt Homes are paying the bare minimum that the law requires them to, no less, no more. Residents are severely out of pocket because of this, in tremendous financial difficulty. To put that into context, almost all properties are buy-to-let, therefore there's no option to switch mortgages to repayment only because they are repayment only. It's easy to think of buy-to-let properties as landlords who are rich. The majority are families who simply can't sell their home, can't remortgage their home, can't fix the interest on their mortgage. And as their family grew, they are what is known as accidental landlords who have been forced to let out a property bought for their own accommodation in order to be able to live somewhere else, and the rental income is not covering the mortgage, which cannot be capped or changed or improved or anything because we are stuck with this cladding, and it is not covering the service charge, which is astronomical due to this cladding, approximately 3 times that of Skyline immediately opposite, and it is not covering the costs that we are incurring because of this. Everybody is pushing it to somebody else. Now, I see no reason why this cannot be done as a discretionary allowance. The valuation office is taking forever. We have people facing really severe financial difficulty right now. Where there's a will, there's a way, and if you wish to help us financially, you can do so. These are young families who are renting out their home so that they could live in a house where their family could grow. This is not some lot of rich landlords profiteering. These are genuine constituents in real difficulty, and therefore I would implore you, please, if there's a will, there's a way, find a way to help us financially. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey, do you wish to answer?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, Jean, I hear you, and I've spoken to you about this and raised this question, and others in this chamber have as well, consistently. It isn't as if we haven't heard quite understandably, the concerns of residents in Crown Heights over many years. And if you think about it, you've been living with us for 6 years, since the incident at Grenfell, and beyond that, the years of the building being built. So I hear that. The responsibility does lie with Barratt's as the developer. That's very clear, and they have signed up to the development pledge the government created. So there's a clear line of responsibility to what they have to do, and they are committed to doing that out of their own cost, and that work will start in September, as we understand. The planning application has gone through. We assisted that planning application at the borough as quickly as we possibly could. And thank you to our officers for doing that, because we facilitated it as quickly as was possible to achieve that. In terms of the issues, the financial pressures, yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying. But the responsibility needs to lie where we're able to deal with that. We don't have that discretion at this time. We just don't. But the reality is both government and Barratt's can assist here, and we've been lobbying them, have been taking part in that debate quite effectively. But also others who are also elected representatives have been part of that debate, and they also have their part to play in this. And so the lobbying of government to give the appropriate financial support is key. And I also understand that the mortgage lenders have given that commitment to government to take part again in terms of lending mortgages. But I'm conscious it needs to go more than that. So yes, lobbying government is a key part of this. So encouraging those elected representatives to help us again, to make as strong a representation as we can, I totally understand. I hear what you're saying. We will do what is within our gift to do. I will not make you a commitment that we cannot deliver on, because that would be false. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. To receive any petitions, I've been told there are none. I'm now going to ask for item 12 to be taken before amendment to the Constitution, Rule 4, committee proceedings. I move it from the chair.
I second that.
Councillor Harvey, did you want to speak? Oh, second, okay. Oh, you've done him out of a job.
That's okay, Councillor Harvey.
Questions? Anybody wants to speak? Sorry. No? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Right, thank you. Resignations and appointments. Right, sorry, Councillor Ashfield.
I will be resigning as chair of EPH, and please can I nominate Councillor Gary Watts.
Is that seconded? Seconded. Is Councillor Watts happy to?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it agreed? Sorry, Councillor Slimming.
Thank you, Chair. Having just amended the Constitution, I also resign as Chair of the Community Environment and Partnership Committee, and I would like to nominate Councillor Alex Lee, who is currently my Vice Chair, to take my place. Just to say that I am not totally leaving the committee, I'm a member of it, and I am now the Health and Wellbeing Champion, which of course will report into that committee, and I will continue to do that job in an unpaid role. But thank you for the opportunity, and I pass over to Alex. I hope you all agree. Thank you.
Is Alex prepared to do it?
I am indeed.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Thank you. Several people.
Agreed.
All agreed? Right, anything else on resignations and appointments? Okay. Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the scrutiny committee, Councillor Durant will be coming off and Councillor Phillimore will be going on. And in substitutes, Councillor Phillimore by becoming a member of the committee, Councillor Tuck will becoming the substitute. So it's Councillor Tuck to become the substitute and Councillor Phillimore to become the substantive member in place of Councillor Durant.
Is that seconded? Oh, it doesn't need to be seconded. Okay, that's it then. Any more resignations to outside bodies? bit spooky, that. Pay review, outcome and updated paperwork. I think the Chief Executive's gone. Right. I'm moving it.
I'll second that.
Is it agreed? Sorry. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As the Chair of HR, I just say, first of all, I would like to thank Sarah Cragg as the Head of HR and OD and her team for preparing the statement and for the huge effort and hard work behind it. I would also like to extend my thanks to those who took on the task of training with Corn Ferry Hay to help enable the new job evaluation scheme to move forward, and to Councillor Edwards and members of the previous HR committee as they work alongside the HR department in the lead up to the completion of the pay and benefit statement and review. Last but not least, thanks to all those who took part in the staff consultation. You'll note, for example, that the pay protection scheme originally proposed pay certainty for 3 years. This has, following feedback, been extended indefinitely to allow future pay awards to catch up and ensure no one has a cut in salary so long as they remain in the same post as at implementation of the policy. I know you've all read the statement, so we'll not waste any more of your time and hereby recommend it to Council for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Somebody want to get the Chief Executive back? Right. Capital Programme and the outturn report. Councillor James, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is the capital outturn report for the last municipal year, ending 31st of March. The capital underspend was 3.155 million for the year, which unfortunately is a thing we've seen recently many times. There is a concern that we are always behind with our capital spending. Lots of reasons for that, which will be explored further over the next year. We'd like to get it accurate. The request is for full council, and it's outlined in 1.7, 1.8, 1.9 and 1.1, page 66 of the original agenda, is effectively to carry over that money. Those schemes still need to be done, and the money is still required to deliver those schemes. So it's to carry over that money into the next financial year. There are some minor veerments as well laid out before you. It's a very factual paper rather than political paper. I'd ask council approve what's set out. Thank you.
Councillor Isaac.
Good evening, Mr Mayor.
Good evening.
Firstly, may I wish the new portfolio holder well in his important new role as custodian of this borough's finances and property. And I hope that he is personally bearing up, given the many extra hours of his time now required as a councillor. I'm feeling very relaxed these days. I realise that his new responsibilities came rather unexpectedly, out of the blue, as it were. But I'm sure he appreciates the sound legacy of good financial management left to him by the last Conservative administration, and that he will maintain similar financial discipline for as long as he is in the position. The problems of timings of large capital expenditures are ones I am, of course, familiar with, so he has my sympathy. The underspend of £3.73 million over just the last quarter alone, compared to the Q3 budget, is disappointing to say the least. In particular, the delays in spending on the approved improvement works, including roof repairs to the Anvil Theatre, which are now pushed out to the next 2 financial years, is disappointing, given that the hold-up I see results partly from not finalising the new lease and KPIs with the Trust. I'm pleased to note the £597,000 Local Authority Housing Fund grant from government the borough is receiving to assist in the delivery of affordable houses in our borough for Ukrainian and Afghan refugees. The level of grant reflects partly, presumably, the generosity of Basingstoke residents in providing temporary accommodation. It will be interesting to learn shortly what the details are of his proposals for delivering those additional homes and the timings, working with local housing associations. It will, of course, be interesting to hear tonight the views of the Labour group on this report. As I understand, they are considered to be an opposition, rather surprisingly, an opposition group, an opposition party, albeit one that has a growing number of committee chairs.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Not so much a speech in favour or against the paper itself. I mean, it's interesting listening to the previous member talk about delays and being surprised that things have overrun, considering this isn't the first time that we've put money back into it, reserves. The party opposite were pretty good at doing that themselves. So maybe in a few months' time, give the leader, Councillor James, some stick if they do the same. But they've only been in power for 2 months, so it's a bit on the off to be slating them now. My thing is, having looked at the report itself, I'm just after some clarification between some discrepancies. On the co-leaders forward, he mentions that it's the 3.155 million is a 15.67% difference. However, in the report itself, in the executive summary, on 2.2, it says it's a 13.5%. I'm just wondering, is there a typo, or am I reading things wrong to be calling that out? And additionally, maybe the Cabinet member can just reassure us that going forward that the money will be well spent and not tucked away for another rainy day like the party opposite used to do. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor James, do you want to sum up?
Yes, coming back to Councillor Lee's point, I should first of all say that the Labour group are opposition. They're what we call constructive opposition. You might want to give it a try. The position you actually raised, this is relating to the capital budget. So these are schemes that we have already agreed, the previous administration have agreed, often with ward members or through 106 monies. They're schemes that we will deliver for improvements. The 3.155 million is an underspend because those schemes have not yet been delivered. It is still our intention to deliver those schemes, so the money will not be tucked away. It is still earmarked for the purposes for which it was going to be spent. Obviously, the capital is there to be spent on sensible schemes that develop the borough and improve the borough, and we will continue to make best use we can of those, the capital funds that we are lucky and fortunate enough to have. So nothing's being squirreled away. It will still be spent on the purpose to improve the infrastructure for the residents of Basingstoke. And hopefully next year we would have spent all of it, because obviously the money is there to be spent.
Sorry? I've just been told it's already been summed up, so we're just going to the... do you agree? Not that it's been summed up, particularly. Comment. Okay. Thank you. Revenue outturn report. Councillor James.
Thank you again. This is the revenue, slightly different from capital. This is the day-to-day spending of the local authority. It's described as a favourable variance of 3.6 million. I wouldn't say it's favourable necessarily. The underspend for the year is made up of a number of larger items. One, Councillor Isaac's already mentioned. I'm surprised he doesn't know the difference between capital and revenue, and that's for the support for housing for Ukraine. That's the money that we got in the last couple of weeks of the financial year. Now, the service was provided as our office did a fantastic job in absorbing that extra work and additional responsibility of helping those refugees from Ukraine. That work's been delivered. Unfortunately, we didn't include within the budgets the money that we'd be getting from central government via county council, because we weren't sure when we were going to get it, and that makes a large amount of the underspend. The other bit of underspend that was significant is the £1 million in terms of staff vacancies. It's a very difficult employment market, and it perhaps points to why the capital spend has been behind schedule. Simply, it's been very difficult to recruit people into post. Hopefully, the new pay scales that have been agreed by council earlier will support in some way of making sure that we have the resources, the in-house resources, to deliver those capital schemes. In addition, there is some money that came through from again, we wouldn't want the money. The contract we have with Serco means if waste collection services fall below a certain level, obviously we are compensated for them failing to deliver the service. That money also was hard to predict and came through towards the end of the financial year. Again, we'd rather that the bins were collected well throughout the year, and I'm sure Serco were the same. So that was a one-off piece of money that has come through to council. There is also another element where, through our employer pension contributions, we make early payments for financial reward. I won't go into great detail because if I was to explain it to you through the medium of rap, wearing a Teletubbies costume, it still wouldn't be very interesting. But there we are. It does generate additional money for the council. The request is for council to approve transfers to the Economic Fund Reserve to the efficiency of 0.08 million, the efficiency transformation reserve of 0.36 million. Some items are carry forward because they're things we haven't delivered, and also to put the remaining £2.89 million into the medium-term financial risk reserve. I can assure members, so I don't get the question, that yes, the Cabinet are aware that money is there. We're looking at how we can improve the services we deliver as a council. Budgets are there to be spent, so we will be making sure that money is put to good use and have no plans to buy anything with the money apart from better services for our residents. Thank you.
Councillor Isaac. Councillor Isaac. Can I have that motion seconded, please? Councillor James. Thank you. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Isaac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As this outturn report shows, the new portfolio holder starts with a very healthy revenue surplus of £3.57 million from financial year 22-23. This enables the transfer of a significant sum to various reserves. It will be interesting to learn shortly from him where he proposes to use this windfall in meeting the new council plan to 2027, approved under the last administration, while maintaining reserves, Councillor leaves, for a rainy day. I do note with some concern at this early stage, gentle concern, that £110,000 of spending on external advice has been postponed on the plans for the new leisure park. Basingstoke residents will, I'm sure, be keen to see progress maintained on those plans, and with all the consultation that has already taken place, won't be happy about a restart or dithering. Similarly, the report discloses £130,000 delay in obtaining expert advice on a new local plan, which, to quote the report, will slip into future years and is the result of Cabinet's decision to delay the public Reg 18 consultation that had been due this summer. Again, many of our residents are, I know, concerned about the impact of delay in approving a new local plan. Is there perhaps a worrying trend that also on the key priority of taking forward the renewal of the Basingstoke Town Centre, this report announces delay in commissioning work following a Cabinet review around the scope and extent of works and the capital and revenue split? I hope not, and no doubt he will be able to reassure councillors and the borough's residents generally that there is no pattern of delay emerging. Thank you.
Is there any other speakers before I ask Councillor James if he wants to sum up? You've been asked, right? Councillor James.
Yes, it's great to get advice from Councillor Isaac for his many years in the job. I will remind him this relates to the last municipal year ending on the 31st of March, which was when he was in charge of it. So those delays are absolutely his. In terms of dithering, I can assure him that we will not be dithering for 10 years on the leisure park like the last administration, and we will not be dithering on the local plan, which has taken 3 years to get nowhere like the last administration. We're very much about delivery, not dithering, but his tips are useful on how I avoid the pitfalls that he spent most of his time in. Thank you.
Do you all agree? Thank you. Amendment to the... we've done that, haven't we? No.
This is a different one.
All right. Amendment to the Constitution and petition schemes, arrangements for dealing with complaints against councillors and miscellaneous. I'm happy to move it.
I'll second it.
Anybody wish to speak on it?
Councillor Basham.
Councillor Basham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to share with members my concern with this proposed amendment to our Constitution. I think we can do better. Petitions form a key part of local democracy. They enable residents to speak up and be heard. If they reach 4,000 signatures, it triggers a debate on this floor. The Council currently accepts e-petitions in all forms, but is not obliged to under the current Constitution. As a Council, we generally reach low levels of public engagement with our consultations. Getting people engaged with local issues can be dry and difficult. So we should be looking at ways to make it easier to add your name to a petition and ultimately to trigger a debate. Platforms like change.org and 38 Degrees lead the way, with data, moderation and communication tools that help to reach audiences through social media. I can easily create a petition, share on Twitter or Facebook, and then email the petition signatories with updates. I'm not saying that people will not be able to work around and do some of this with modern.gov, but it will be harder. In my experience, government software rarely matches the functionality and usability of private sector solutions. So the proposal to only accept e-petitions delivered using modern.gov software will have a chilling effect. It will mute local voices. I say this because I tested it. Many councils use modern.gov for petitions. I tested Southwark. There were a handful of live petitions with very low levels of participation. I had to create a Southwark Borough Council account before I could then log in and then add my name to a petition. Anyone who's worked in software will tell you that every click or keystroke loses users. When I was collecting 2,250 signatures for my Eastrop Park parking petition last year, roughly half signed on paper, half used 38 Degrees. People are busy, but people care. They often say that nobody listens. The ability to add your name without having to register an account was important. The ability to instantly share via social media was important. I was also able to use the tools on 38 Degrees this week to email signatories to tell them of Cabinet's decision on Monday to revoke those charges. So I hope you see the chilling and suppressive effect that mandating the use of modern.gov will have on our residents' voices and the ability for petitioners to organise and share information. Finally, I wanted to challenge the 4,000 signatures. The last 4 petitions that went into the thousands that I can find, and more experienced members, please correct me, were my petition at Eastrop Park, 3,188 signatures in December 2021 by our MP Maria Miller, asking to designate Old Down as a local nature reserve, one in February 2020 about the Camrose that reached 1,100 signatures, and approximately 5,000 signatures in April 2021 against 50% cuts to the Anvil budget, which incidentally qualified but never made it for debate in this chamber. Unfortunately, I could not find the last petition that made it for debate in this chamber. Can any of you remember? I think we would all agree that had we had greater opportunity to debate at least some of these issues in this chamber, we may have had better outcomes for residents, or at least a greater understanding of the issues. As a chamber, we can and must do better. So while I appreciate that officers find it hard to check that e-signatures qualify as residents, given the levels of local engagement on the biggest issues of the last few years, it seems that checking the veracity of signatories using modern.gov is a solution to a problem that does not currently exist. In summary, we need to get better at listening. We need a lower threshold for debate. We need people to engage with local politics. And if they choose the platform, so what? If a handful of non-residents add their name, so what? What matters is that these are the issues that we were elected to consider, and we must not neglect that duty. If we're to change the Constitution, we have an opportunity to do things differently. Mr. Mayor, I would like a recorded vote on this matter. I ask members to reject the current proposal and suggest that officers come back with a constitutional amendment that allows all e-petitions and has a lower threshold for debate in this chamber. We need more democracy, not less.
Councillor Misbound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On matters of constitution, I think many members in this chamber would agree that it's really important that we unanimously agree what those changes are, and we have processes in place so that we can have a conversation about those constitutional changes, the implications of them, and how we potentially feel about them. We have something called the Constitutional Working Party that myself and fellow group leaders attend, and at that last Constitutional Working Party, there was a conversation about how important it was that we got unanimous votes. I am deeply concerned if other groups are not coming to the chamber with a unanimous vote within their group to pass it. I am very unhappy to support a paper on the Constitution that does not have universal, unanimous support.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was with Councillor Mannesbaum at the Constitutional Working Party. I understand it's the changes that we're looking to make in December where we were really looking for full wholehearted support of the changes. I must admit, we did have some discussion around the petition scheme, and we all certainly, members of that Constitutional Working Party, were all very keen to make sure that the democracy is as accessible as possible to our residents. There are a number of issues. I think you've raised one in terms of the other formats, such as change.org. You could end up debating a petition of 4,000 people, of which only 11 actually live in the borough. It's unlikely, but it's possible. And so given the way social media works, there was a risk we'd waste a lot of time. But there's also, I think, a real overrating of an instant debate. So we are presented with 4,000 signatories on a petition about a complex topic. And then here we are as 54 people having potentially no expertise on that topic, trying to have an informed and reasonable debate and doing the subject justice without the support we normally get from officers in terms of doing the research, fact-checking and bringing reports back to us. The current system does allow for petitions to be brought to this council and then put before the council and then go away to relevant cabinet member who can then commission a report. It can go to committee, it can then come through and be debated, an informed debate at this council. An instant debate isn't all what it's set up to be. So whilst I respect the comments made by Councillor Basham, and I know he's been, since his election, very keen to amplify the residents' voice, and rightly so, I'm not sure that the 4,000 signature petition and an instant uninformed debate is necessarily the best way to respect their contributions. So I will be supporting it. If, of course, the council decide differently, then I'm sure the Constitutional Working Party can look at this element again. But I do say I am fearful that what we really like to do isn't going to get done and doesn't actually work if you think through the consequences of instant debates on petitions. Thank you.
Councillor McIntyre, wherever you are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't intended to speak to this, but I just Councillor Basham's words, I just did want to respond to them. I do appreciate the spirit of his speech to full council. I absolutely agree that we should be reducing barriers to democracy. But again, listening to Councillor James there about allowing expert advice to sit and guide us. Now, IT is my background. I have worked for Microsoft. I work in enterprise architecture of various different functions. I guarantee you, within 24 hours, I could easily conjure up a fake petition to come to this council with 4,000 signatures from change.org. It isn't hard, and this is why we see the internet, unfortunately, is not a place where we should put our utmost faith into it. Modern.gov is there for a reason, and when you look at the report, it talks about giving officers the ability to validate and verify that the people who are engaging with this council have the input to want to engage in it, and that we're not being misled or guided by nefarious actors. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Listening to the conversation that we're having in the chamber, it raises lots of different points around this particular constitutional change on the petition scheme. Now, I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong, and it's not necessarily good that we sit here in this chamber to try to sort them out. There's a context to the Constitutional Working Party where we are evolving the Constitution, and it's that evolution where we have this debate, we test out, we have a discussion, we see the issues, we come back again. I'm not afraid of the Constitutional Working Party in any way reviewing the petition scheme again based upon the comments received this evening and actually having a good look at lots of different avenues of engagement that we want with the petition scheme. Totally taking on board what has just been said by somebody who's worked in the field and understands that issue, as well as Councillor Basham, who has quite rightly raised the issues of concern about access to the product in the first place, and how different members of the public can engage with this authority, and actually having the easiest method of access, and having it that it actually gets a democratic voice heard. Because actually, at the end of the day, that's what we want. Residents want to have their voice heard. Whether it's a 20-minute debate on the floor of this chamber, whether it's a report that goes to a committee for a fuller and more in-depth discussion, how we go about that is worthy of a discussion. So while we might agree this evening to the petition scheme or not, the question is that it isn't rested here this evening. The very debate we've had means that the Constitutional Working Party needs to look at it again. And so I think that's what we should do.
The recommendation is on page 136. I'm proposing to vote on number 1, and hopefully 2, 3, 4 and 5 can be voted on separately. Well, en bloc.
Does everyone agree 2, 3, 4 and 5?
Does everybody agree with 2, 3, 4 and 5? Agreed? Right. Item 1. Right, voting is in front of you, please vote. Right, closing the voting. The noes have it. Right, thank you.
You just need to check that everyone's voted who wants to.
Everyone who wants to vote, will you please make sure you voted, please?
Well, it doesn't carry anyway. It's lost. The recommendation is lost.
Right, the recommendation is lost. So do we go for the vote on that?
You've agreed that that's...
Oh, we've agreed. Okay, thank you. Come on.
There we go.
Okay. Appointment of co-opted members of the Audit and Accounts Committee.
Moving it from the chair.
I'm moving it from the chair. The Deputy Mayor
I'm
doesn't know
seconding
but
it.
Seconding it.
Does anybody want to speak?
Anybody wish to speak? Or
Agreed.
agreed? Thank you.
Same again for voting. Extension.
Extension of terms of independent person and independent standards assessors. I'm moving it from the chair.
I'm seconding it.
Agreed? Popham Parish meeting conferring the functions of a parish council and appointments of a proper officer. And I believe I've had one notification that Councillor Taylor.
Move it first.
Oh, sorry, we've got to move it first.
Second.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Just want to say a few words. This is quite an unusual item to see on a council agenda. I just wanted to take the opportunity of commending the Chair and the resident members of the Popham Parish meeting for being so proactive in getting this done. For 11 years, the villagers have been unable to access the village green and pond, which was fenced off by the then landowner. However, when it was recently put up for sale, the chair and members of the parish meeting acted immediately. They sprung into action to try to acquire it for the use and enjoyment of all residents. As a parish meeting, they didn't have the powers of the parish council to purchase the land, and so they studiously researched all possibilities. And with the excellent help of our legal department, we came to this evening's proposal. So trusting that you will approve this, I'm sure you will join with me in wishing the residents of the delightful hamlet of Popham many years of future enjoyment of their village pond and village green. Thank you.
Is there any other speakers otherwise, or do you agree? Agree. Thank you. Annual report of Standards Committee. I'm moving it.
Seconded.
All agreed? Thank you. Item 17, overview and scrutiny annual report. Moved.
Seconded.
All agree? Notice of motions. Councillor Mamela.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dear colleagues, I don't want to read out the full motion for the sake of reading it. It is there in the order papers. But I stand before you as a proposer of this motion that holds immense significance for the residents of Crown Heights. It is my privilege to address the council and advocate for the rights and well-being of those who call Crown Heights as their residence and their home. Crown Heights serves as a sad example of the consequences of inadequate development and management practices. As we delve into the heart of this motion, as my resident Jean mentioned, we find a community grappling with a myriad of challenges, each presenting its own unique burden. Our fellow residents of Crown Heights are facing antisocial behavior, enormous maintenance charges, and fire safety concerns that loom as a constant threat to their safety and peace of mind. The delays and failures in implementing essential fire safety improvements have inflicted financial strain and emotional distress upon these residents, hindering their pursuit of fulfillment life in a secure environment. Mr. Mayor, moreover, the ongoing issues with the development have resulted in a negative equity, leaving homeowners trapped in the properties they cannot sell. The domino effect has seen landlords defaulting and tenants facing eviction notices through though no fault of their own. The unjust burden of council tax bans on these properties no longer reflect the true value of these properties, unfairly adding to the financial strain and borne by the residents of Crown Heights. In addition to these challenges mentioned, it has come to my attention that the similar sized properties adjacent to Crown Heights, they are at least 2 bands lower for council tax. This discrepancy further exacerbates their financial burden on our Crown Heights residents. The high insurance costs in the area have caused maintenance charges for these flats skyrocket. Astonishingly, my fellow councillor just reminded me, some residents are now paying nearly £3,500 as a maintenance charge for these flats, Mr. Mayor. It is the financial strain on their livelihoods. So as we devolve, so it doesn't stop there, Mr. Mayor. So once labeled as luxury apartments, they were branded as luxury apartments, and they were sold as luxury apartments, and they were promised heaven on the earth, like swimming pool and a crèche and everything. But at that time, they were sold for $175,000, which I looked into the land registry. But guess what? Right now, they are selling for less than 150,000, and there is no buyer to buy those apartments. So this drastic drop in value further complicates the financial stress on the Crown Heights residents. In light of these grave circumstances, it is incumbent upon us responsible council to take decisive action and extend our support to those in dire need. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I have submitted what the resolutions that council can take here. I plead each one of you to stand in solidarity with these residents of Crown Heights and lend your unwavering support to this motion. Together, let us pave the way for a brighter future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Court. You want to speak now or hold?
I will speak now, Mr. Mayor. I see here a good example where we find ourselves in a prime position to be able to support our residents in very, very difficult financial constraints, here through no fault of their own. So here's an opportunity for the council to do something to help those out there. And it may be a range of measures which we agree we have to do, but they're not in the position to do it for themselves. So I leave you to make this motion, and thank you.
Councillor Court, I believe that's your maiden speech. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's really important to state that the residents of Crown Heights deserve support from the appropriate authorities, and we should do all that we can, because it's right to do so to support them. The motion has issues in its approach and language, and let me set out why. You ask us to write to the valuation agency. That's fine. But with regards to the rating, the properties are banded by the valuation agency as per their open market value at the 1st of April 1991. That property is then applied to a band, and the council tax charge is based on that band. Unfortunately, there are no temporary reductions available which would be able to reduce the banding while the works are undertaken. We can write to the valuation agency, but the expectation should not be raised about residents that they will change the banding. You ask us to write to the Secretary of State for levelling up. The Cabinet Member for Housing wrote to the Secretary of State in 2021, urging the government to take action to avoid leaseholders picking up the cost associated with any remediation work. Again, we can write to the Secretary of State, but we have done so, and the Council has already communicated those issues quite clearly. We would encourage any residents of Crown Heights, any residents who are facing difficulties with their mortgage payments, to engage with their lender first, but officers in the housing team are available should anybody require support, and they should, if they do require advice or support struggling with mortgage payments, get in touch with us so that we can support you. You ask us to establish a task force in the council. Again, a council motion was put forward at council in 2021 in relation to the fire safety of high-rise residential buildings. A multidisciplinary team was brought together, representing officers from across relevant disciplines, including housing standards, building control, housing legal and communications, and considerable work has been undertaken in that period to support residents. Officers have continued to liaise with relevant parties at Crown Heights and Winterthur Way to ensure work to remediate those buildings was progressing as quickly as possible, and Barrett's applied for planning permission to completely remove the external wall cladding at Crown Heights and replace it this last April. The Council's planning team worked proactively with the applicant at both pre-app stage and application stage to ensure that all the matters were dealt with as quickly as they could be, and planning permission was actually granted in June 23. These works are going to be fully funded by Barrett Developments. They are the original developer of the flats. They've signed up to the developer pledge. We need to hold their feet to the fire and monitor what goes on, but that financial burden for the unsafe external wall systems is going to be met by them, not the residents. Now, as part of the planning process, the newly formed building safety regulator was consulted to ensure that the works that are planned meet the most recent regulatory framework for fire safety. We can also be assured that this time our council's building control team have been appointed as the inspector on this project, and that means we, our officers, will regularly inspect the works throughout the remediation of the walls to ensure that all the works meet those building regulations. And those works, I'm told, are due to start in September this year. As for the single point of contact for Crown Heights, well, Barratt Homes are holding monthly calls with residents and leaseholders, I'm told, of the development to keep them fully updated. There is absolutely no reason why these calls cannot be extended to ward councillors to be fully informed, and if the residents require more consultation, we can facilitate and support that. However, you also ask us to regular 2 weekly updates to the Brookvale and King Fairlongs councillors. Well, I understand that a fire safety update report was presented to EPH in November 21 and 22, and that a further email went to all local ward councillors in March of this year. The officers will update ward members with any significant developments. You will get that feedback, you will get that engagement, and as soon as the work starts, you will also get that engagement in terms of what the officers know is going on. Aaron, we are doing all we can, and it appears that Barratt's have actually stepped up here. Can I ask, is our MP challenging the laws governing management companies in the House of Commons? Are we actually seeing our MP challenge that particular law? Because we can't change it, but she can actually have an impact there. So I hope Maria is taking seriously your motion and will challenge directly the law governing management companies, because I can tell you what, it's not just residents in Crown Heights that will benefit from that. There are residents across our borough that are facing exorbitant management company charges that will benefit from such an intervention. I think we need to carry on doing everything we can, and I'm not opposing the motion because I support the sentiment behind it, but more importantly, out of respect to the residents, I think we should look to everything we can do. It's important to state that we will do so. We will look at what we can do that is within our power, but we will also lobby and work with residents to those authorities, like the government and like Barratt Homes, where the responsibility also rests.
Councillor Ibrahim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to start with just showing my support to residents in Crown Heights. I think Ms. Fisher earlier articulated the challenges that the resident has to bear in relation to financial challenges, but also the worries in living in a place where it's not safe to live in. In the spirit, I do support the motion. As I'm looking for solutions and support for the residents, but I have some concerns on the actions that were suggested in the motions. Councillor Harvey have pointed out some of these challenges around the language and the actions taken. Just to pick one up as an example, you might have known that in order for you to do valuation, I think individually can go and do that with valuation agencies themselves. And there is also a risk of, there is potentially they could go down, but there is a risk of also going up. So I think coming up with motions that's not going to bring about the change that residents really want is quite, I see it appalling, and actually it sends a false hope. I really hope that motion could have included actions that in practice will bring about change to residents, opposed to a tokenist motion to just shows that our colleagues are acting on behalf of Crown Heights residents. And just last questions, either that way or our respective colleagues haven't done their homework before writing up their motion. Just to add to that, the tourism has been in administration for 6 years, and it's been up for 13 years or more. There has the Grenfell crisis or disasters happened 6 years ago. I just wonder where we were when this happened. Are you willing to speak up now after losing your power in administration? Thank you.
I believe that's all made. I believe that was your maiden speech. Right, Councillor Millis-Bound.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to address a couple of very specific issues in this debate. And as has already been mentioned, they cover absolutely the residents of Crown Heights, but also a wider audience of our residents. One of the specific items that this motion picks up is council tax banding and the system that we have. And I think it's really difficult for residents, isn't it? For far too long, we've had a system that's remained unchanged. We're all confused, frustrated. How does it relate to my property? There's a lack of transparency. Absolutely, you can appeal it. I indeed appealed my council tax banding when I first moved into my property, and there are very, very specific criteria and timescales as to when you can do that and when you can't. It was introduced with the best of intentions to fairly distribute tax, but do you know what? It really doesn't help us when people don't understand how that fair system works, particularly when they look at a neighbouring block, and believe people are paying more. A fair and transparent tax system would help. I think it's also really important, Mr. Mayor, that in this chamber, although I'm conscious the resident that we have with us in the public gallery raised her hand, and our process and system doesn't allow her to speak, I am concerned when we have items that are described as facts, and the resident who would know more than anybody else vigorously shakes her head and says that that is not true and work is not due to start and hasn't been communicated to residents to start in September. And with that, I have great empathy. I was the chair of a management company for 10 years. I have just recently stood down. I would encourage people of all parties to share my recent post about the right to manage and what laws are already in place that allow residents to take control from some very difficult managing agents and managing companies. It is something that is tricky to do, and it does require a lot of volunteer work, process, systems, and demonstration of facts, and I would applaud anybody that does it. That's it, Mr. Mayor. I am concerned, though, that we have a piece of fact that's been given to us, which we have the chair of the Residents' Association, which says it is not true.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Lee and then Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brutally honest, I'm not too sure which way I will be voting on this motion tonight. I do, however, support the sentiment that is behind it. It's interesting to see that this is being put forward this evening, considering how long the party opposite were in power for. I'm sure that the response that the leader of the council now gave tonight would have been similar back then as what has been given tonight, sorry. As may have already been mentioned, it's not within the council's power to write to the valuation agency to request revaluation for residents. Whilst many people would like to see that their council tax go down, there is a real risk that it could also rise. Now, of course, this would be good for the council coffers. However, especially during this Tory cost of living crisis, it could put the budgets of families within our borough under strain. It's clear from the leader of the council's response that this council is trying to do everything they can to support those residents. And it concerns me that the proposer, as ward member, has only taken until now to try and resolve this issue. Maybe a suggestion to the proposer would be to lobby the Member of Parliament for his ward, someone who I believe is a member of the Conservative Party herself, to ensure that residents receive the financial support they need and the compensation for the pain and suffering that they face. I welcome any further input from members across the chamber to sway my choice, because at the moment I am still unsure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In line with Councillor Basham's world, I've taken some questions from behind me. The reason for that is because we do want to hear from our residents, and when we have a particular resident with us, I think we have to find a way to make sure that that voice is heard. So, firstly, the work's not going to start until November, is what I'm reliably informed is the situation. And it is right that the Valuations Office get a nudge to say elsewhere we have different bandings on different properties of the same scale and size. So we can do something. And perhaps, Councillor Lee, it wasn't apparent what we were doing when Simon and I were leaders. But it genuinely, we felt that going there as often as I did, I certainly went there a number of times, and I know Councillor Minnis-Pound was there as well, talking to residents, understanding what they are going through. It is tough. I was delighted, and you might think it's pertinent, that the proposer of this motion took advice from us when we were looking at it to make sure it actually tied to what we could achieve. And I accept Councillor Harvey's view that we can only do what we can do. We do need to talk in the right ears. We need to put pressure where we can. We need to make sure that the engagement of not just one resident, but them all is heard. And I say to you that this is a scandal that is continuing. So we, however long you've been in this council, and whether you are a member who approved the planning permission or not, you have a responsibility to those residents. We have a responsibility to all our residents to be fair on them, as they would like to think that we will be their champions as elected members in this council.
Councillor James.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Lee wanted some suggestion on how he deals with this motion. I'm going to suggest he supports it. In doing so, it's really about understanding, and from what Councillor Raskin indicated, perhaps communication to the residents isn't as strong. Now, it may not be our responsibility directly, but in such a serious matter, with livelihoods at risk, it's really important that residents are communicated with on a regular basis. So, what I don't want to do in supporting this motion is indicate in any way that we can solve things that we can't solve. I don't want to raise false hope that there's a magic answer to all the problems faced by the residents in Crown Heights. What I want to do is give an assurance that we will look at, certainly around that communication piece, is there anything else we can do, anyone we need to shake into action? So, and also how the other issues could be looked at in the future. So I would suggest to Councillor Lee and as well as all my other members is support the motion, but in doing so, we're recognising the plight of the Crown Heights residents and showing as the council how supportive we are of them and how much we empathise with their current situation. But also that we will review, are we doing everything we are going to do, and the Cabinet will see it as a way forward. But what I don't want to do is raise that false hope. I cannot promise that we can solve anything in here, let alone everything in here, but we should support it in the spirit of solidarity with the Crown Heights residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tustin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My very first motion here in council chambers was thrown out on a technicality. It was around fly tipping. You may well remember it. It was a lesson I learned. However, I've read through this motion. I've read it as amended, and I've been, like Councillor Lee, also very torn between supporting it. I absolutely support the spirit of this motion and what it's trying to do. As a councillor, what I care about most is finding solutions for residents' issues that they raise with us. And that is why I have now decided I am going to support this motion, but I don't actually support it as the motion in the way it's written. I do struggle with the idea of the valuation agency stuff because that is something that residents would go and sort themselves. But from the spirit of the thing and knowing, having spoken to the current leader and co-leader, and the spirit of the way they want to get things done for residents, that is why I will support it, because I know what we will then take with this is we will go away and work with this to try and find the right solutions for residents. So from that, that's actually made me decide I will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCormick.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Much of what I've said has been said already, especially by my able colleague, Councillor Ibrahim. I think it's very telling that in the update paper, the approach to the Secretary of State's been struck out because an approach has already been tried to the Secretary of State and that's been found wanting. Crown Heights is not an isolated incident. We have hundreds of blocks of flats up and down the country that are similarly afflicted, and it's a national scandal that things haven't been done after 6 years after Grenfell, the appalling tragedy that happened 6 years ago. I think this motion could benefit from some substantial amendments so that it more closely reflects what the council actually can do. But I think the bottom line on this, it's appalling how residents have been suffering for so long, and they've been paying these outrageous charges, living in unsafe properties. And I'm heartened to hear that actually finally this year we might actually get round to actually fixing the problem, and that we're not expecting residents to put their hands in their pockets. And if there is anything that can be done to alleviate these charges, maintenance charges, because I think these dwarf what they're paying in council tax, and mortgage charges, properties that they can't sell, but they're still expected to pay increased mortgages. You know, I'm all for that, but that to me suggests the government should be doing that, and the government isn't listening. So I think this will only substantially change when we have a change of government. Thank you.
Right, I have nobody else on the list. Councillor Aaron, do you want to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, there is my way of saying, there is your way of saying. Apart from these two, there is something called truth. The truth and the fact is, Crown Heights was in East Rope ward for many years, and it has come to Brookwell and Kingsfurlong ward in the last 2 years. That's the truth, Mr. Mayor. And now, I'll come to other things. Recent administration, when they took it over, they mentioned this is a chamber with 54 community champions. And unfortunately, my colleagues have taken a political line about this motion. Yes, I'm happy to be corrected. My wording may not be perfect, and many of you may know it. I'm not a native English speaker. Instead of pointing it out, this wording is not right, the actions are not nice, I would have welcomed the real actions for this motion, whose papers have gone out at least 15 days before. So, again, I would like to appreciate the colleagues who supported this spirit and really see the difference that this motion can make to the Crown Heights. And once again, thank you for the speakers who took time today to speak about this. And I would like to request recorded voting for this one. Thank you very much.
It's been moved and seconded. Recorded vote in front of you. Those, oh, it's gone down a bit. Anybody else who wishes to vote before it's stopped? Motion carried. Thank you all very much. Councillor Ox, sorry. Moving your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to talk to you this evening about flooring in new-let social housing. I'm sure this topic resonates with many councillors in the chamber this evening. Having safe and decent flooring in rented accommodation is such a fundamental part of having a decent home that when I received a request for help from a resident in my ward who desperately needed floor coverings, I thought a solution would be relatively straightforward. And how wrong was I? The young family who contacted me were in a particularly vulnerable situation due to their circumstances, which were highly complex and frankly shocking. They had nothing, just the offer of social housing to start their new lives, but nothing to kit it out and no money beyond the usual benefits. Now, we are very fortunate in the borough to have many community-based religious, cultural and other support groups who are absolutely brilliant when people are in such dire circumstances. A local charity and the community helped them source white goods, furniture and all the myriad of things they needed. it completely knocked them back to find, with only weeks before moving in, that they would also need about £2,000 to buy flooring for every room except the kitchen and bathroom. I thought that there must be a grant or other solution somewhere we could access, as this was a vulnerable family with a young child. I contacted the Housing Association, I contacted the BVA, I asked the borough, I asked the County Council Social Services, I asked councillor colleagues. No one had a solution. Lots of people said they were aware of the problem. Many councillors had been approached by residents as I had, but no one had found a way to solve it. The family said that perhaps they could borrow the money by having an advance on universal credit. What a way to start their new life, in debt and unlikely to get out of it. I was reaching out to other charities in the borough who might be able to help with funding when the Housing Association relented and accessed their emergency funding, providing the flooring at the 11th hour. Thank goodness for that. The family was so relieved. However, this is not the usual way this story ends. It is usual practice for housing associations to insist tenants leaving to remove flooring before they go, and for new tenants to provide their own, often incurring debt to do so, or to live with bare concrete or rough wood flooring for months or years. The reasons by the housing associations given are health and safety. However, surely carpets in reasonably good quality, which can be professionally cleaned, could be left for the next tenant, rather than being sent to landfill. Having safe flooring for young children is vital for their health. Flooring helps with insulation, and it helps to make a dwelling into a home. Although most housing associations have adopted the policy of new tenants providing their own flooring, the more enlightened ones do not, because they appreciate the difference it makes to the health and well-being of their tenants and, frankly, their tenant satisfaction ratings. Housing associations were created to build thriving communities as their first priority, not just building houses with tenants as a means of raising income for their business model. So, Mr. Mayor, the vision this chamber unanimously adopted says that we want to create a borough with inviting places and communities where people want to live, feel they belong, and it is easy to meet everyday needs, where we feel and are safe, active and healthy, and we look out for the needs of the most vulnerable so that no one is left isolated. Mr. Mayor, we want everyone in our borough to feel welcome here and to have a decent home. We must therefore do everything we can to ensure safe and decent flooring is provided in newly let social housing in the borough as soon as we can. I ask the Chamber to support the action set out in the meeting papers to address this issue affecting the most vulnerable in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Court.
Again, Mr. Mayor, I have the pleasure of addressing this conference. So, for me, I see these associations every day, and I come across so many examples where people have not got flooring that I would even qualify and say was fit for an elderly home. We have seen occasions where people move in, they haven't got the money for flooring, and as a result, they have to engage to get community work done or spend time and money to actually get a complete flooring done. That can take years, and sometimes it never happens. And I've seen too many examples of those. This results in unlevel flooring. And while it might be acceptable for, shall we say, our more able residents, it is not acceptable for our more infirm and elderly people. And again, for them, a trip or fall is a serious issue. So we should be looking to see what we can do. Now, as far as the housing associations go, as far as I can see, they are meeting their remit. It's within their code of practice to actually provide floor coverings in kitchens and wet areas, but nothing else. Now, that is not their fault. That is what they're required to do. They're meeting the minimum provision. So for us to get anything done, we have to get the relevant guidelines changed. And it's going to take some time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. But here is an opportunity for us to start the process. We would be the first borough to start this. Let us see if we can't do what we are very good at, trying to get the gold standard for boroughs. So I leave it for you to debate. Many thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Court. I have two names, and that's Councillor Lee and Councillor Laura James.
Thank you again, Mr Mayor. Whilst I wasn't too sure I was going to support the previous motion for the reasons that I previously stated, I am pleased to say that I will be supporting this one. And I say support, again, I certainly support the sentiment that is behind this motion. However, some of the actions requested to me seem a little ill-conceived and maybe some outside of this council's control. That being said, having worked alongside some of the borough's school welfare officers to provide carpets, rugs and curtains, amongst other items, to vulnerable families, many of whom live in homes provided the housing associations that are in our borough, I believe it is important that we, as members, do all we can to provide a minimum decent standard of living. The health and safety aspect aside, which is important, nobody looks at this from the perspective of children living in this borough. Cold, empty housing, housing that doesn't dampen the sound of residents above, does not provide a safe space for children to learn, to thrive, to be children. It is important that we try our utmost to get housing associations to realise the impact this has on our residents and their children. And I hope the new administration will do everything that is within their powers to support all residents in housing association homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Then we've got Councillor Laura James and then Councillor Fillmore.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In talking to our housing association partners, it appears there is not a blanket policy where tenants are required to remove flooring before they leave a property. New tenants may struggle to purchase new flooring needed when they move into their properties, as do many people within our borough. I'm aware that there are residents that cannot afford to furnish a new home, whether it's with carpets, white goods, sofas, beds. I'm told that there is funding available from our key partners for tenants in need who require new flooring. There is also support for those people that require white goods and other things that make their home a home. Are you aware that the local authority, the local community furniture project, an amazing local charity, has an arrangement that if people cannot afford to furnish a new home, they can be supported with free furnishings, including white goods? Many of you will not know about the grants and services that are available from our housing partners. So I'm delighted to announce tonight that this administration has just advertised this week for a new housing association liaison officer post. This person will act as a key liaison between housing associations and members. The aim is to improve partnership working with housing associations. Our housing associations are one of our key partners in supporting us to deliver our housing strategy and homeless strategy. One of the key roles the new liaison officer will lead on is to facilitate regular liaison meetings between ward members and housing associations, identifying agreed actions and monitoring outcomes against these. The actions we want to achieve will be delivered through positive and constructive relationships. We cannot tell a housing association what to do. We have no direct power over them. The improvements we wish to make will be achieved through constructive partnership and clear lines of communication. We will build a relationship where we achieve change by working together. Our shared objectives are about improving housing standards for our residents. We know that members are concerned about operational issues, and we will get better performance by better engagement and communication. Each of our 25 housing associations have their own governance structures. The language in this motion, where it refers to housing associations should, and this council expects, is misguided in that we have no powers to require a housing association to fit floorings. We have, having met with both Vivid and Sovereign, they are both committed to working with us on shared agendas. As an administration, we're also developing housing livability standards that will form part of the local plan and housing strategy, driving forward standards. I look forward to reporting back to councillors on the work we're rolling out. I will be supporting this motion tonight. Like others have said about both motions, I have concerns about it, but in relation to the concerns that people have, I'm very happy to support this. I think it also links to the discussions we had about the motion on child poverty at Cabinet this week, and I think it links to the work that we are going to do in relation to an anti-poverty strategy, and I can see that there's some synergies within this, and I look forward to working with everybody on this going forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Phillimore.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's hard not to support the spirit of this motion, even though it wasn't previously addressed by the previous administration in the area, but obviously Councillor Vaux's come across it with her casework. However, there are other contributing factors that need addressing. The motion mentions the high demand for social housing. This puts residents under pressure to accept properties, whether they have decent flooring or not. Residents that have been on the housing register for a long time sometimes are left with no choice but want to house their families. Why have the proposer and seconder only addressed flooring in social housing? Residents are sometimes signposted to private rental accommodation by our housing department. Once in private rented properties, they are deemed adequately housed and find it difficult to get back on the housing register. Therefore, why does this motion only address flooring in social housing and not only include the private rented sector? There is a need to increase social housing across the borough, which will be addressed by the new administration. It's worth noting that the previous administration's low-cost housing scheme couldn't even attract one purchaser in 2022 to 2023. I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. I have nobody else. Councillor Hawkes, do you want to sum up, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all the speakers on this topic. I appreciate them taking the time to consider the motion and what it's talking about. Councillor James, I appreciate what you were saying. I purposefully didn't mention specific charities in my speech, and one of the reasons I did that is that some of them do not wish to be named, even though they're doing fantastic work. And one of the reasons they ask for that is that they get swamped. You know, they feel their capacity is a breaking point and they don't want that publicity. But I absolutely agree with you. The furniture project is brilliant. I think it's fantastic. I think what they do is marvellous in many, many ways. I could talk about it for hours. But yes, we have lots of really good organisations that help. The barrier I hit was around flooring. That was the issue. And that is why I focused this motion. As Councillor Phillimore said, I could have made it wider, but I wanted to focus it on a key issue that I felt that we could do something about, rather than broaden it out into something that becomes amorphous and gets sidetracked. The reality is, housing associations, this was a major housing association I dealt with, and I talked to officers in that housing association, very senior officers in that housing association. And I assure you, it wasn't until considerable pressure was put on them that they changed their mind from they cannot to they will provide that flooring. So whilst I appreciate your desire to reassure us that there is funding there, it's actually really difficult to get hold of. So I'm very pleased to hear about the liaison officer. I think that's fantastic. I think it's a really good thing to be doing. That's, if you like, in the spirit of what I'm looking for here in this motion. If you're upset with the wording, I apologise for that. But for me, this is about working in partnership with our housing association colleagues in a situation where we don't have power to make them do anything other than it is the right thing to do. So yes, I am hoping that having people like your liaison officer and others will help us move this forward by talking, as this motion talks about, dealing with other districts in the locality to work together so that we can get a body of groups and organisations and housing associations working together for the good of the people who are living in their housing. That is what the essence of this motion is about. It's about improving lives for people who live in social housing. And let's start here and move it out. Thank you very much. Oh, could we have a recorded vote, please? Thank you.
I take it you'd be happy with an electronic vote? Yes. Thank you. Go for the vote. I think the vote's carried. It is carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Stillo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're very lucky to live in Basingstoke, and in my ward, Kempshop and Buckskin, there is a jewel that needs saving from the threat of development, and it's called Old Down Woodland Park. Old Down is about 12 hectares of exquisite grassland and mature woodland, classed as a site of importance for nature conservation. There are over 150 different species of trees, shrubs, plants and grasses, and wild birds, butterflies and small mammals thrive. It's a place of tranquility where families can take an evening stroll or an afternoon dog walk. I go there frequently with Derek. And over the past month, we have seen grassland covered with a blanket of wild cowslips. Now, our local MP, Maria Miller, has been campaigning to save Old Down for years. And I want to ensure, along with my fellow Kempshop and Buckskin councillors, and also Councillor Katecha, whose motion was passed by this council last year, that this area is protected for future generations to enjoy. So, would the Cabinet member please give me a concise update on the progress that has been made on giving Old Down Woodland Park the benefit of protection it deserves with local nature reserve status, and specifically when LNR status will be given? Thank you.
Councillor Dill, I think that's your maiden speech this time around, isn't it? Right. Councillor Tomlin, where are you? There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dillo, for your question. I totally agree that Old Down is an important area of open space and it delivers both recreation and wildlife habitat. The land is protected by its SINC status whilst being managed proactively by the council and local volunteers in line with a management plan that was put in place in 2010. The protection afforded by the SINC designation, along with our local plan policies, ensures the site won't be adversely impacted by development. I hugely appreciate and recognise the tremendous efforts of local conservation volunteers and their achievements in delivering the biodiversity enhancements on Old Down. The recent Environment Act requires us, the Council, to set objectives to protect and enhance biodiversity and act on those objectives. We will be driving this forward through the new biodiversity strategy. The proposal to designate Old Down as a local green space in the local plan update was set out in the report to EPH on the 3rd of March 2022.
This designation effectively provides the same level of protection in planning terms as green belt. Councillor Dillo attended the Many Down Overview Committee on the 21st of June this year and raised a similar question. It's viewable on YouTube. The answer from the Many Down project director explained that part of the site is held as a potential access into a parcel of land currently promoted in the draft local plan. And I would like to remind Councillor Dillo that these plans were drafted by the previous administration, which it seems did not inform their own group, or indeed inform Dame Maria Miller. Hence, I assume the reason for your question. Nothing would give me greater pleasure than to declare Old Down as an LNR. But as you can see, there are complex land interests at stake and the need to protect the council's interests. However, we are working hard to overcome these inherited issues as part of the local plan update. Whilst the local plan update is progressing, the environment team are planning to deliver significant open space
Councillor, you need to
improvements
wind up, please.
at Old Down in 2024-25 using £400,000 of 106 contributions. We will consult with local residents and local conservation groups to share these proposals to maximise the benefits to everyone who enjoys this valued landscape. Thank you.
Councillor Dillo, do you have a supplement? Thank you. Councillor Lee.
As per the order paper, please, Mr. Mayor.
I think that's Councillor Harvey then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are as keen as the ice rink users are to see the poor conditions of the ice rink addressed as soon as possible to ensure that it continues to be a key part of the Basingstoke Leisure Park. We're a freeholder of the land that the building stands on, but as we do not own or operate the rink, the action we can take directly is to encourage the owner and the operator of the rink to come to a formal agreement with us about how they're going to carry out the repairs that they are responsible for under their leases. We want to move this forward as quickly as possible. Discussions with the leaseholders and operators of the rink are continuing to agree a phased programme of work that they will carry out. I can't speak to the statements that others made just before the election, but I know where we stand on this, and we will do everything we can to get a solution. We recognise that the ice rink is an important part of the leisure park, and we're also driving forward the aquadrome and looking at other potential facilities. So the future of the ice rink is as an important part of that successful leisure park that we are all looking for. Thank you for your question. I appreciate where it comes from.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Lee?
I do have a supplementary, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So from my understanding, having spoken to many people involved behind the scenes, Planet Ice have gone as far as they can with regards to starting the repairs. Contractors are lined up, raring to go. It's also subsequently been brought to my attention that the EIHL, the English Ice Hockey League, have been informed that there may be no ice available from January 2024 due to the need for repair works to take place and the limited time available to do them. This poses a real threat to ice hockey in Basingstoke, as junior and rec ice hockey will likely have to be disbanded. This could mean that it takes 10 years to re-establish the required setup, leaving a hole in the income for Planet Ice, putting the viability of a rink in jeopardy, and risking the loss of a well-used and loved facility.
Is there a question in
there? Is, Mr. Mayor, it's just coming. It also risks the loss of jobs for those who work there. Could I request a meeting with the relevant cabinet members to look into any potential solutions, whether that be permanent or temporary, as I'm sure my son and many others would disown me if they didn't have a venue to play a sport he so much loves every weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. The answer is yes. I think any loss of access to ice is going to be sorely felt by any of the ice users and sports teams. We recognise this, which is why getting agreement to move the matters forward so quickly is clearly what we need to see happen. I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you that the situation needs resolution. Now, given the years that we've been waiting for action on the ice rink, all of New River Retail's promises over all those years we've been sat waiting, is there any wonder we are where we are today? Now, any more delay simply adds frustration to those ice users. So I just want to be absolutely clear. We get it, and we are going to do everything we can to find a solution.
Thank you, Councillor. Your next question, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, as per the order paper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thanks, Alex. It is pretty infuriating when you sit in your home and you can hear these idiots using our ring road as a racetrack. It's antisocial behaviour, it's downright dangerous. Now, what I know is that the police do take this issue very seriously and that we can reassure our residents that they are taking action. Now, obviously, we can't go beyond that, but I can assure you that they do take it seriously and they are taking action. Suffice to say, it's a fair question and the issue does need to be tackled.
Councillor Lee, supplementary.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A number of councils across the country have been trialling noise cameras that help identify excessive noise from cars. Can I invite the new leader of the council to write to the relevant department in government, which I believe is the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper MP, to express our interest in taking part in those trials?
We're going to be writing to lots of ministers tonight, given everything we've done, but I'm very happy to add that to the list. And let's hope government step up to the point you're asking for, to be perfectly fair. We will write to them and we'll do that.
Supplementary? No, we have that. Next question, Councillor Lee.
Yeah, I'll just let them roll straight into the order paper. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
I'm grateful to Councillor Lee for his question. You know how long I have been campaigning for access to public toilets in our Memorial Park. I met with the then new leader of the council, Councillor Rattigan, with the executive of Park Run years ago to ask for his support to deliver toilets in the park. And the answer we got was no. Hundreds of runners on a Saturday morning in the park were particularly affected by the lack of toilets. One of the first things we have done as an administration is to deliver toilet facilities to the hundreds of park runners. One runner came with me to meet Councillor Rattigan and has emailed me and said, yesterday, in complete amazement, I found refurbished, fully accessible toilets open just for us on Saturday morning at last, and so very welcome. This is just to say very many thanks to the council for doing this. We had almost 500 yesterday, all marking 75 years of the NHS for our run. It was an excellent day in both respects. Accessible public toilets matter to this administration, and we are exploring how we can deliver public toilets in the park. And you will be pleased to know, Councillor Lee, that we are looking at how toilets can be fully accessible to everyone. We are committed to and want to see greater access to public toilets in our urban parks and our rural areas too.
Supplementary, Councillor Lee.
I did have a supplementary that I'd prepared. So, however, I welcome the fact that the toilets have been reopened for those that are at Park Run. I look forward to seeing more toilet facilities around the borough, not just at the War Memorial.
Needs to be a question,
residents.
Please, and Councillor James, switch it off.
As part of your looking into how you can provide that, can you also look at how you can provide disabled access toilets, including the relevant adult lifts? As a father of a disabled daughter, I wouldn't be changing my child in many disabled toilets across the country because they just don't have the right lifts, they're not clean. So if we can look into that as well as part of it, that would be great. Thank you.
Councillor James, you need to... Oh, it's too late.
Councillor Lee, I'd be very happy to look at it, but if you would like to come and talk to me and we can talk about it so I really understand the issue, I really will pick it up for you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lee.
As per the order paper again, please, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alex, for the question. I was very pleased that we were able to scrap the car parking charges at Eastrop Park earlier on this week, just ahead of the start of the school holidays. I was there myself earlier on, and it was great to see the car parking machines covered up and the free parking signs put up. In terms of your question, I'm told by officers that there aren't any other car parks near green spaces or parks that currently charge.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given that our town centre and especially the town area is suffering from a lack of footfall with shops closing and prices increasing, Could I ask that the new administration look into increasing the free parking time limit in all council-owned car parks in the town centre so that it can breathe new life into what was once a thriving hub for our borough?
Thanks, Alex. Yes, as you know, we're looking as a cabinet as to how we can rejuvenate the town centre, and the top of town is a particularly important part of that. And getting parking right is going to be part of the solution. So yes, it is something we'll definitely look at.
Thank you. And then lastly, item 21. Do you all agree, or do you? Oh, is there any questions on the minutes of all these committees? On block, can I move them? Seconded by, okay. All agree? Good. Thank you very much. Have a safe journey home.